Hi there, and welcome to another exciting session of training provided by Quicksoft. In this chapter, we're going to cover Fusion system option for receivables. Yeah, this system option set the foundation for your receivable module. All the option which are all the setup which you do in this module affect your receivables at almost every stage. Whatever setups you do, some are more for defaulting purposes in the next stage. Some are also affecting the functionality which you use. Okay, so we're going to go through each and every setup which is there so that you understand what to set and where and how it will be utilized when you use the receivable modulator. Okay, so let's start. So in the when you go to system option, yeah, you will see a variety of setup. I'm going to explain you all the setups first, then later I will go to the screen and show you each setup how we are going to configure those. But it is important for you to understand those setups before you start configuring those. Okay, yeah. So there are also various chapters. There are also various chapters within the system option screen. There are various sections of data which you need to populate. I have broken down by each section, so I explain you by each section what you need to populate. As you will notice, there are so many fields on the screen. You don't need to populate all the fields, but there are those which are star, which are mandatory. You need to populate the values for those fields, and also you can also change those values as you move forward. As your business evolves, you want to change some setup, you can come to the screen and change. Yeah. So okay, so let's start with billing and revenue options. Split amount. Yeah, this amount, whatever you specify, is used to divide report for reporting invoices under and over this amount. So this amount becomes like a center. Yeah, if I set, for example, 2000 here, then you can generate a report to see how many invoices below 2000 and how many invoices uh, above 2000. So this becomes more as a pivot for you to identify the count of invoices which you have generated before this below this amount and over you have generated before this below this amount and over this amount. This split amount information is used in the collection effectiveness indicator report, yeah, which gives you a variety of factors around this split amount. Yeah, so this is useful for the collectors. Second very important field is the days in days sale outstanding calculation. Every organization who is in the selling business, they want to make sure that when they sell to the customer, they collect on time. Yeah, every customer is paying the money back to them on time because they have given goods or services. If they don't receive the money on time, then they may have some cash problem. So all the collectors who are assigned to collect the money from the customer, they look at again similar report, collection effectiveness indicator report, to see how effective our collection is. Yeah, so this measure DSO is one of the KPI which is used to identify are we collecting on time or not. Yeah, for example, uh, in this example, if you see, so to calculate what the formula to use is total outstanding receivable. What happens in this case? So let's say how does system calculate this? Let's say outstanding receivable is 50,000 and DSO days I give it 30 and sale for last 30 days is 100,000. Now, how should you decide what DSO? Generally, this is the typical payment term which you give to all the customers. Let's say if I'm giving 30-day payment term to my customer, so I will look at 30 days as a DSO. So I make sure that I receive the payment from the customer within 30 days. Yeah, if it is later than that, then my uh, my collection is not effective. For example, if you look at this case, if I take this example and calculate DSO, my outstanding receivable is 50,000, divide by sale in 30 days with this much. So multiply by DSO days and get 15 days of sale outstanding. Yeah. So 15 days sale outstanding with a payment term of 30 days, which is very good. Yeah. So that means my collection is very good. Customer is paying me either on time or early. Let's look at another DSO days and get 15 days of sale outstanding. Yeah. So 15 days sale outstanding with a payment term of 30 days, which is very good. Yeah. So that means my collection is very good. Customer is paying me either on time or early. Let's look at another example. Outstanding receivable is 150,000. DSO is 90 days. It's like payment terms 90 days I'm giving them. Sale for 90 days is this much. Yeah. So when I calculate DSO based on the same formula, I get 45. Yeah. So this is also another example to calculate that. Okay, my days of sale outstanding is 45 days, but I'm in a way, if I'm giving 90 days payment term, outstanding is 45 days. That means I'm doing good in my collection. But if it is other way around, for example, if my uh, in first example, if my sales is sales is 30 days outstanding is equal to more than how much I sell in that period. Yeah, so that will show me negative picture that I'm actually used by the business to evaluate the effectiveness of your collection and also using the collection effectiveness indicator report. Yeah. Next one is required salesperson. If you want to ensure that whenever this is invoice created, you want to tag this invoice was created, but basically who is the salesperson responsible for the sales, you can specify that here. If you're using order management module, all this field will come from order management automatically to the receivable invoice. But if you're not using order management, you're only using receivable, then you can enforce this if you want to. Yeah, so that when you enter invoice, you have to specify who is the salesperson responsible for that. If you choose required salesperson, you can also specify sales credit percent limit. Yeah. So once you have enabled salesperson required for the invoice and receivable, let's say use the sales credit percent limit field to limit how much is the revenue plus non-revenue sales credit can be given to the salesperson for this particular sale. Yeah. Remember this is just a percentage you're specifying. Yeah, there is no sales credit calculation here. You're only specific percentage here. There's another module from Oracle called incentive compensation, which takes this data from here and a lot of other complex parameter which is decided by the business before they decide how much commission on the sale has to be given to the salesperson. Yeah, so this is just specifying. If you want to enable this one, you say required salesperson is yes, so they will choose which salesperson has made the sales and then also specify what is the percentage of revenue uh, credit goes to the salesperson. Then the incentive compensation will pull the data calculation for the actual commission to be paid to the salesperson. Print remit to address. If you want to use remit to address, is basically when you create an invoice, there is a setup which is called remit to address setup. We configure the various addresses, yeah, for a customer to make payment to. When I create invoice, I also choose what is the remit to address is. So when I print invoice, the remit to address is also printed on the invoice. So if you want to print remit to address, if you select this option, then it will print this remit to address on the statement as well. So basically to indicate customer where to send the payment to. Yeah. Print home country. Yeah, if you want to print your home country on your invoicing statement, you can also choose this option. Default country. Yeah, this is where you specify what is the default country. Let's say if I specify default country as Singapore, yeah, then for all my tax calculation, my flexible bank structure, flexible address format, all will be following based on the default country which I've given. Yeah, so when I put default country as Singapore, when I go to any address, it will follow the Singapore address format. Okay. Application rule set. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, when you create invoice and the customer gives you money, yeah, so when customer pays you money, how do you apply the money on the invoices? Yeah, so these are the rules which decide which invoices will be knocked off first, which invoice will be done later. So these are rules which we'll be covering later, then you get more clarity. Yeah, discount basis. If you're giving any discount to the customer, what is the basis for the, what amount should take system take as a base for giving the discount? Should it just take a lines amount, or should you take the invoice amount, or lines freight item and tax, line and tax not freight item and tax? So these are the various options which you can specify. So system decides when there is a discount to be calculated, what is my basis, on what amount I should calculate discount. Yeah. Then allow unearned discount. Now what is unearned discount? Yeah, basically what happens, let me give. So let's say you're given somebody a sales, you're given him invoice and the customer is supposed to pay you in 30 days time. Now in order to encourage the customer to pay it faster, I tell the customer the payment term is 30 days, but if you pay me within 10 days, I give you 2% discount. Yeah, now customer makes a payment within 10 days. Actually this is done using the payment term functionality. Yeah, so we define particular kind of payment term which the moment customer pays within that given days, system automatically calculates the discount for the customer. That is called earned discount. Unearned means there is no discount eligibility of the customer, but at at a receipt level I specifically want to give in some discount. If you enable this one, then system will allow you to give unearned discount. Discount on partial payment. Now this is another thing you have to choose. If customer makes a partial payment, do you want to give him discount on you? As you will realize soon, all these setups are basically very business oriented. We cannot say this setup if it works for one organization, other organization may want the same setup also. So there's careful planning required before you configure this setup. You need to discuss with your client or where you're implementing to explain them the option correctly so that the client can give you an informed decision back. Yeah. Otherwise, if this is not explained correctly to a client and they don't use this functionality, then they've actually missed the advantage of this functionality available in the system because they're not even aware how to use it. Yeah. Allow any business unit to process receipt. As you know, in Fusion, there is a lot of emphasis on the shared service concept. Yeah. So if you use a shared service receipt processing, yeah, then system can allow you that if you are having centralized processing of your receipt, then you can receipt for any other business unit as long as all those business units belong to any other business unit as long as all those business units belong to same ledger. In shared service concept, the processing, there's a concept of servicing business unit and client business unit. So once that is defined, then they will be able to receive it for the necessary business units. This is a section where you give accounting related information. Many accounts given here are primarily for defaulting purposes, which you can change at various stages of your transaction cycle. Yeah. So tax account. Yeah, this account is used to default in your tax code and rates window. When you define tax code and rates, this is account which is given is defaulted there. Yeah, as it's mentioned, default value, you can always change it if required. Unallocated revenue account. If your accounting method is cash basis, this is not applicable if you're using accrual based accounting. So basically what happens is if you get a receipt like an over receipt, yeah, in cash basis everything happens when the money goes out or money comes in. Yeah, so when basically money you receive and you receive an over receipt, there's no invoice to knock it off against, then gets booked into unallocated revenue account. But if you are using accrual based accounting, this account is not applicable for you. Typically now most of the organization use accrual based accounting. Next one is cross currency rounding account. As the name itself says, if you are receiving money from a customer not in the currency of invoice, let's say my invoice currency is Singapore dollar and customer is making payment in US dollar. Yeah. So in that case, when the system does the calculation and if there's a in then it finds some accounting amount mismatch because of this conversion of different currency, then it books the uh, rounding error into this cross currency rounding account, yeah, to balance the journal. Realized gains account and realized loss account. This account is used for to book your realized gain or loss. What is the realized gains account? Let's say when I uh, create an invoice based on exchange rate, let's say create an invoice for Singapore. Say when I uh, create an invoice based on exchange rate, let's say create an invoice for Singapore dollar. I should choose a different currency because if it is your functional currency invoice and customer is going to pay you in a functional currency, there's no realized gain or loss. Yeah. Let's say if I'm creating in my functional currency USD or its functional currency is Singapore dollar and I'm creating invoice in USD. Yeah. Let me show you an example for that. Let me show you this example. Let's say I have an invoice and my functional currency is Singapore dollar. Yeah. This is my book currency is Singapore dollars. Yeah. I'm creating an invoice in a foreign currency which is US dollar. When I create, the exchange rate is 0.75 to my currency. Yeah, this is my invoice amount and equivalent in my book currency is 750. Yeah, so this is what is affecting in my book. Now when the customer makes a payment in a gain scenario, let's say the exchange rate has become 0.8. Yeah, so when customer still gave me the money, the exchange rate has gone other way around. So now the converted amount is 700, which is lower than my original estimated converted amount. So this is my realized loss. So this is how system calculates realized gain or loss at the time of getting a receipt and then books into the account which we store here, which we define in realized gains account and realized losses account at the system option. Next one is automatic journal import. Yeah, if you enter the automatic journal import, yes, then when you run the process from GL transfer from uh, receivable to GL, system will automatically default this value as yes. Yeah, so you can change it if required, other system will default this one. Use header level routing account when you're creating invoicing in foreign currency and you give you exchange rate. As you know, exchange rate can be in many decimals. Yeah, so when your final currency like in Singapore dollar, my final currency is 2 decimals. Yeah, but for conversion rate can be in 7. This one. Use header level routing account when you're creating invoicing in foreign currency and you give you exchange rate. As you know, exchange rate can be in many decimals. Yeah, so when your final currency like in Singapore dollar, my final currency is 2 decimals. Yeah, but for conversion rate can be in 7 8 decimals. So when system converts, then whatever the rounding difference comes, Yeah, system can store the rounding difference into the account which you specified header level rounding account. Be careful when you set up this account. Once you save this feature will always stay there at header level rounding, and you cannot disable this. So this is the feature, and then you give the account which has to be given. Yeah. First you decide whether you want to enable header level rounding. If yes, then you specify what account to use for header level rounding. Next one is days for posting cycle. Yeah, this is the number which is used by the posting program from subledger to GL to ensure that the whatever chunk of transaction is pushing to GL, it doesn't run out rollback cycle. So you can push the data of 30 days in one go to GL. Sometimes because of so much processing and so much transaction you may have in your receivable, so there could be some system performance issue or rollback segment issue which due to which the process can fail. But if you set these days, then accordingly, then system, let's say in this case example of setting 17, then if I'm pushing 30 days data, system will split into two batches internally. Yeah, so that will ensure that there is a no system performance or rollback segment issue when pushing data from subledger to GL. If you are using fund accounting, then you can enable multi-fund accounting if you have that option. Continuing on the billing and revenue, we have transactions. Yeah, tax invoice printing option. When you're printing tax invoice, how do you want to print tax on the invoice? Do you want tax by each item, or you want to print total tax only? This is for a standard text format. If you use, you can decide how you want to print it. Document number generation level. In receivable, there are two numbers in the transaction. One is a sort of you call transaction number, which you can also call invoice number, which you choose whether it will be automatic or you want to give manual number. Typically people use automatic, but that is a number which you give, that is a number which will be running number. Yeah, so if you choose automatic, the only format you can give it the starting number. There's no other formatting required which you want to use. But if you want to use a specific numbering convention, that can only be achieved by defining document number. When you reach the document sequencing chapter for receivable, I will explain you more how to define document number sequencing. But here we are specifying when to generate document sequence number. There are two stages in receivable invoice. One is when you save the invoice, other is when you complete the invoice. This is a process you will learn when we receive or do the transaction entry. So at the time of saving or at the time of complete, yeah, at that stage, system just generates a transaction number, which is just a running number, which I told you earlier. But when you complete is a stage when system will validate everything entered in invoice is correct and then mark the invoice as complete. Only completed invoices are eligible to be posted to GL. Yeah, so you can choose when to do this save or complete stage. Item validation organization, this is primarily used for order management to see when the item are coming from order management. You want to validate the system, how should system validate items. Yeah, whether this in typically in inventory we define item master organization, which is used to validate the correct item code and all that. Allow change to printed transaction. Do you want to restrict your user that once they print an invoice, system marks the flag as printed? Once they print an invoice, can they still go and change, make some changes to the invoice? Yeah, this some organization want this control that once printed and sent to an invoice, can they still go and change, make some changes to the invoice? Yeah, this some organization want this control that once printed and sent to customer, they don't want someone make modification because in the system, because otherwise what you have sent to customer and what you have in your system may be mismatched. Yeah, again this is point to take note that even if you enable this option, if there are some transaction happen against that particular invoice, then this change anyway is not allowed. Yeah, you may have received a payment against the invoice, or you have posted some credit memo adjustment against the invoice, then anyway you cannot change the original invoice. Allow transaction deletion. This is an option you have to carefully analyze whether you want to give this for deletion or not, because typically due to audit constraint nowadays, auditors are very concerned about missing transaction numbers. Yeah, so if you enable transaction deletion, then the transaction number will get lost. Yeah, also you will learn later in a document numbering chapter that you can define documents as gapless. Gapless means that there cannot be a missing number there. So this number becomes a contradictory if you have that setup. So typically nowadays nobody allows transaction deletion. So if you create an invoice wrongly, you can create a credit memo to offset it. Yeah. Recurring billing. There's another functionality available called recurring billing. If you want to use recurring billing functionality, if you enable this option, only then the recurring billing option appears in the menu, otherwise that will not be shown. Okay. If you want to deliver invoice and statements to your customer via email, then you can configure this in the system option that from name, from email, this is your enterprise name, and from email which system should show, and the reply to email where the customer should reply if they have to. Subject of the email, yeah. Do you want to show a business unit in the subject of your email? If you want, it will show that. Configuration give here and send email to the your customer with the invoice as an attachment to the. Similarly, for the statements, it will send the statement as an attachment using the details of your configuration which you are given. In the system option, this setup for transaction and statement are two different setups. I'm just showing you because there are contents are same. I'm showing you as part of one slide here, but in the system there are two different setups. Do you want to calculate late charges? What are late charges? Late charges are basically if customer makes payment late, do you want to penalize them? For example, do you want to charge certain interest on the overdue items? If you assess, if you want, then you can tick this assess late charges, so the system enables the functionality for you to use the late charges. Yeah, these two options are primarily average options are primarily for balance forward billing. What is the balance forward billing? Balance forward billing is basically, in many organizations there are so many noises generated for a customer. Forward billing is basically, in many organizations there are so many noises generated for a customer uh, on daily basis due to various process they have. But let's say if you generate 50 invoices in a week, do you want to send 50 invoices to customer, or you want to merge all those 50 invoices in a balance forward billing program and generate one invoice and send to customer? Yeah. So if you're using balance forward billing, then to calculate late charges, system has this option average daily balance calculation basis and average daily balance calculation period. These two options are used by the system to identify uh, what transactions are late and how to calculate interest on those. Yeah. When you calculate interest, the interest can be uh, output of an interest calculation can be either an invoice or a debit memo or an adjustment to the invoice. Yeah. So if in the later stage when we configure configure to create an invoice, then it's asking what type. And then if you want to create debit memo, provide what debit memo type of transaction type which system should use. And then for interest and penalty, if you're going to create an adjustment, what adjustment type system will use. All this when we do the transactions and adjustment in the system, you will understand what I'm explaining. If you're not familiar with these things, you can hold it for time being. You will learn it when we do these setups later. Yeah, let charge transaction source. Whenever you create any transaction, let's say I'm creating invoice manually. Yeah, transaction source will be called manual. If I'm importing from some external system, I would have given the source name for that system. But in this case, when system is creating the late charges invoices for you, what source? Because source is a mandatory field in the invoice screen. What source system should use? You specify a source here. Next one for customer, you can specify a grouping rule. Grouping rules are used basically when you are importing invoices. How system, because you can send so many invoice lines from your whatever source system which is sending to receivables. How system decides you are importing invoices. How system, because you can send so many invoice lines from your whatever source system which is sending to receivables. How system decides to group those into one invoice. Those are defined using grouping rule. Yeah, and also create reciprocal customer. If you create reciprocal customer relationship, it will allow customers to pay for each other's debit item. Typically this option is not used because you don't want any that by mistake people start creating receipts against wrong customer invoices. Yeah, so the better control which is used is to by defining customer account relationship, which you will learn in the customer chapter, so that only related customer can make payment for each other invoices. This is useful because sometimes, for big corporations, you can give services to their various legal entities, but the payment finally comes as a check from the headquarters only. So when you receive the money as a chunk and you create a receipt, you want to be have the ability to apply to the various accounts of receipt. You want to be have the ability to apply to the various accounts of the same customer. Otherwise, if that is not allowed, you will have to create so many separate receipts and apply separately. Yeah, so this is an option which can be useful. Next, there are setups required for auto invoice. Auto invoice is basically a functionality available in receivables which allows you to import invoices from any external system. Yeah, this is basically the interface available. So as long as data is populated correctly in the interface table, the auto invoice process can import and convert those into your receivable invoices. Yeah, purge interface table. These are setup which you need to configure. Decide whether to delete successfully imported invoices from interface table. Once invoice is successfully imported, it stays in the interface table as marked as imported successfully. Do you want to keep them there or delete? Typically, organization delete those because those are already imported, so we don't want to keep those here. The memory byte. Now, this is again more on the performance aspect. Yeah, so when autonomous program runs, it's basically very memory intensive program. It consumes a lot of resources on your server. So it's basically asking what memory you want to configure. Typically, when you implement the system, if you are loading huge chunks of invoices from your some other system, and then if your autonomous program fails because of rollback segment or some other error, then you may have to adjust this to increase the size of the memory which system should take for this process. If you're not importing invoices from some external system, this setup doesn't matter to you. Log file message level. Again, when you're importing invoices, sometimes there can be some errors. Yeah, so how detailed the log file should be. If you choose 1 is the minimum, 3 is the more detailed. So the more detailed, sometime when you're facing error, you can temporarily set it to 3. So when you run the process, it gives you more detailed information for you to troubleshoot. But once the issue is resolved, you can change it back to 1 because you want to see the more processing time system will take for the runtime. Yeah, so you have to be careful when setting this one. Now this is also interesting option, accounting that's out of order. Yeah, as I was talking about document sequencing earlier, which how do you define document sequencing for a system? You need to find the sequence number for the invoices. You can also tell the system that whether to enforce chronological order on the document. This is specified at a ledger level. What is chronological order? That means if I create invoice number 25 on 10th April, can the invoice number 26 be created on 9th April? That means I'm creating a next system will give me when I create an invoice, system will always give me next number. Yeah. When system will give me next number, can the date of my next number invoice can be earlier than my previous number. Yeah. So if you say enforce chronological, then system will not let you do that. Yeah. If you're using this chronological enforcement, yes, then you must when auto invoice faces this problem, what to do. Yeah. So if transaction accounting date is earlier than a document sequence accounting date, yeah, what is document sequence accounting date? The new accounting data system which is going to create. It will retrieve the value of the system option out of order. That's either reject or adjust. If you choose reject, system will reject the invoice so that you can fix it. Adjust, it will update the accounting date with the document sequence accounting date. Yeah. So let's say that in my example, 10th April. So the next number is coming in 9th April. So it will make the uh, next invoice number date to the current date of your document sequence. Importantly, if the document sequence accounting date is in a closed period, yeah, the previous date was in a closed period, yeah, so it can't put you that date, right, because that is all period is already closed. Then you adjust this date to the first open accounting period, yeah, the first date of your next date, right, because that is all period is already closed. Then you adjust this date to the first open accounting period, yeah, the first date of your next open accounting period, whichever is available, yeah. These are again related to auto invoice only tuning segments. Yeah. So when auto invoice program is if it is taking too long to complete and if you have thousands of invoices to import taking too long to complete, then you specify which is the more uh, used segment, more variety of segment in your chart of accounts. Generally, typically account code can be so many different account code, and you specify that segment in this accounting flex field segment, and the system will actually it creates internally some index to improve the performance of that. And you also specify what system item flex field you have. This is the flex field which is defined for your item master. Yeah, so these two segments when you set, and if your auto invoice import is not giving you good performance, you need to configure. So far we have been discussing billing related system options. Now we'll cover the option which are related to receipts or cash. Okay, so let's start. Yeah, auto cache rule set. Now auto cache rule set is used for logbox only. If you're doing manual receipt entry, auto cache rule sets are not used. Auto cache rule sets are used to define the rules to apply to receipt when AR transaction, when you want to match against the AR transaction, which rules to apply and what sequence. There are 5 rules available. When you create an auto cache rule set, basically you provide a sequence of which rule to apply first, which rule after. So you can give a sequence. These 5 rules can be given in the sequence as per your requirement. And when the auto cache rule set is given at a system option, when there is logbox uses this to apply to your transaction, it will follow the rules one by one to clear the invoices. Now let me explain the rules to you. Now, let's say if you your first one by one to clear the invoices. Now let me explain the rules to you. Now let's say if your first tool is match payment with the invoice. So if this is the first tool what system will try to do, it will try to see whether receipt amount matches exactly with any of the customer's invoice amount. If it matches, it will apply that receipt to that transaction. If it goes through this one, then it will look at clear the account. Is the receipt amount equal to all open debit and credit item? When I say open debit item, these are all invoices, debit memo. Credit item could be uh, additional unapplied receipt for a customer or a credit note, whatever. So net of that, if it is equal to the receipt amount, then system will apply. Then third one could be clear past due invoice. Now the difference between clear the account and clear past due invoices is, in a clear account is looking at all the open debit items, yeah, whether it is due or not. In this past due, it will look for only the open past due debit items, yeah, whether it is due or not. In this past due, it will look for only the open past due debit and credit item, yeah, and then if some of that matches the receipt, will apply that to that particular receipt. Next one is clear past due invoices grouped by payment term. Now there could be so many past due invoices. What system will do, it will pick all those invoices and then group them by the payment term, and then create different group 1, group 2 for that, and then see tries to apply the oldest group to the receipt. In case sometimes the old group and new group the amount is same, then it will sort the data by lowest installment ID, which is internal ID in the system, to apply to the receipt. The last one is apply to the oldest invoice first. Yeah, so this will just sort data by the oldest invoice number it has and then apply to that first. So depending upon how you want to configure auto cache rule set, it could be you may say just apply to the oldest. You may say just apply to the oldest invoice first as the first option. Then system will just apply that, and it won't even reach the next level of application. Yeah. Okay. So this is for auto cache, which is primarily used only for logbox. Yeah. Now next one is auto match. Yeah. Auto match rules are used to match receipts to the reference number given in the remittance. Yeah. When a reference number is given to receipt, yeah, system will try to match it first based on the sequence you give here. Yeah, at 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So if you give transaction number, system will try to match that number with the transaction number first. If you give sales order number, you try to match sales order number. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, you try to match where that number which is given the remittance, where it can match with that number. And in auto match rule set, it basically uses this information to apply receipt to the receipt automatically. Auto match rule set can be defined at customer site, customer account, logbox, and receivable system option level. This is the defined at customer site, customer account, logbox, and receivable system option level. This is the sequence which it uses to find which rule to apply. It will look for customer site first, customer account, logbook, and finally system option. Wherever it finds, then it will use that rule to apply in the system. Yeah, auto match rules you can also define qualifying percentage score and threshold, which system uses to recommend transaction for receipt application. Important thing word to see here is recommend. System recommends the eligible transaction which should be applied against the receipt. Yeah, use auto apply. If you enable auto apply, then system will, along with recommendation, it can automatically apply the transaction to the receipt as well. It can also handle the exception like if it's an over receipt. Yeah, what to do with the over receipt money? Do you want to create on account balance, or do you want to create a refund? Yeah, these are rules which can apply here, specify here. Useful if your customer often pays for transaction before they are created. Yeah, let's say customer already paid this the money in advance and transactions are getting created later. Yeah, so auto apply looks for and attempts to apply open receipt transaction created within the number of days you specify. Yeah, so for example, if you enter 10, then auto apply considers all receipts created within the past 10 days. Whatever number you give here, system will look for all receipts created during those days and try to apply to transactions during the auto apply process. Yeah. So anything created longer than 10 days, it will not consider those. Otherwise, auto apply only considers a receipt to apply only once. Yeah. So this is the all the setup will become more clearer when we actually go and set up this in individual auto cash rule, auto match rules. So you'll be able to appreciate how this come into action. Yeah. So at this stage, just have the if you have the basic idea about this rule, that should be good enough. Next option is require billing location for receipt. Yeah, so this is basically useful that if you yeah, if you have not defined statement sites for the customers, then if there's a receipt created for a customer and the receipt only has a customer name, then it will not appear on the statement of the customer. Yeah, so by enabling billing location at the receipt and forcing that rule, then it will appear on the customer standard statement. So this is important to specify. I think this should be mandatory so that any unapplied receipt also appears on a customer statement. Otherwise, customer would have paid the money and it will not appear on its statement. Allow payment of unrelated transaction. This is an option which can be used if you have related customer but not define their relationships. Let's say, for example, customer A and customer B are related. Yeah, but we have not defined the relationship in the system. In that case, we should uh, define the relationships, because if you just don't define relationship, and then basically system will allow anybody to receive money for anybody's invoice, which sometimes can limit per seat and two right of limit per seat. This is useful if you're going to use the right of functionality in the receipt. Yeah, so when we do the right of chapter for the receipt, I'll explain in more detail, but the key to understand is if you are whatever threshold is set here, if you say from right of limit is 100, then system will not let you create a right of receipt below 100, right of activity below 100. And if you say 2 is 1000, it will not let you do right of activity above 1000. Right of is very useful feature in receipt, because this is not only used to right of receipts, this is also used to meet the requirement of withholding tax. I'll share with you when we reach that stage. So this is crucial to specify, and if this is not specified, it will not let you create right of transaction itself. Yeah, minimum refund amount. Yeah, this is again if you have over receipt from a customer and you want to create a refund, what is the minimum amount? Yeah, let's say the over receipt is just 50 cents. Do you want to create a refund for the customer because the process say the over receipt is just 50 cents? Do you want to create a refund for the customer because the process for processing the refund can be more expensive than actually the refund amount? So this is why you set up the minimum refund amount. Let's say if you say 100, that means below 100 if it's a refund, then system will not let you create that. Chargeback due date. When chargeback is a functionality available where you can actually whatever, if you have so many transaction against an invoice, so many activities, and then finally you want to close old invoices with whatever money has been paid for the outstanding balance, you want to create a new invoice which is called chargeback. If when you create that kind of invoice, what should be the due date for that invoice? Due date should be based on open invoice due date, whatever date you entered, or open invoice due date or receipt date. You can choose either one of the option to create chargeback due date. Allow payment deletion, similar to transaction deletion option we did in the billing section. Yeah, if you want to enable payment deletion, you can do that. But if you are enabling document sequence numbering for you can do that. But if you are enabling document sequence numbering for payment, then you should not enable this option. Otherwise, your document sequence number will be missing. Next one is the application exception rules. So basically, exception rules indicate how to process each overpayment and underpayment condition. Yeah. So what happens is these rules are used as after logbox processing. Logbox is a process which is used to import receipts from external source. So after logbox processes and applies receipts, the autoapply process uses the application exception rule set to determine how to manage over and underpayment. Yeah. If there's an overpayment, the application exception rule indicates whether to refund the amount to a customer, place the amount on account, write off the amount, or leave the amount unapplied. So these are the rules which you specify. So give a exception rule name and also right of activity. If you're going to choose a write off, then we have to provide which right of activity system will use for AP for creating the refund. Yeah, so this is used by logbox when the auto apply process handles the application of receipts. In the accounting section, you have realized gain and loss account. Yeah, realized gain and loss account comes into picture when you have receipts or invoices in foreign currency. When your receipt is done at a later date when the exchange rate has been changed, So based on that change in the exchange rate, the realized gain or loss is calculated. Cross currency rate type, in case you are going to receive money against the in the currency which is not same as the invoice currency, this becomes a cross currency. So in that case, what rate type system will use to convert the cross currency which is used to make the receipt. Cross currency rounding account, yeah. So this is used when there is a because of cross currency there is a rounding issue, which is clearly explained this is issue, which is clearly explained this example. If you notice, let's say you're getting invoice in functional currency, French currency, and you enter invoice in 1000 francs and enter euro as a payment currency. Yes, let's so this, as you notice, this cross currency invoice is in franc and the payment is in euro. The payment amount converts to 152.53917 euro. Yeah, at the fixed conversion rate of whatever rate is the fixed rate available for that currency, and is rounded to 152.54 euro. Yeah, the payment converted back to your functional currency is 1000.0054. Yeah, so this is the converted amount, which is rounded to 1000.01. So now because invoice amount of 1000, that's new converted amount rounded becomes 1000.01. The 01 difference is recorded in the rounding account, in the cross currency rounding account. Because of cross currency, this kind of rounding issues can come. System books is rounding. You have an option to direct debit your customer. Yeah, in many countries this is a direct debit facility available. Yeah, where actually you can at the predefined date you have authorized your supplier that whenever uh, this date reaches, they can directly debit your account and withdraw the money against the invoice. This is typically used in the government agencies more. Let's say, for example, your power bill. Yeah, so every month you're receiving invoice for, like, say, 150 or 200. That's your regular power bill. And if you set up this arrangement with your power company saying that, okay, that's fine. Every month on a stipulated date, you can actually directly debit my account as long as the amount is less than 200. Okay, so that saves you the hassle of receiving invoice and making payment, and then also ensure that you don't have delay in your making payment. Yeah, so with this automatic arrangement, yeah, in system an automatic generated receipt file is sent to a bank for collection from the other party. Yeah, so based on the if you specify to a bank for collection from the other party. Yeah, so based on the if you specify receipt confirmation threshold amount, let's say, like example I give 200. Once it's within the confirmation threshold, uh, then it does not require any confirmation before proceeding. So system will an automatic receipt batch with the total amount below the value when it doesn't require confirmation, because automatic receipt processes the steps to process, it generates a batch and then requires confirmation. But if in below the threshold or equal to threshold, it will not have the confirmation step. Invoice per commit or receipts per commit. Yeah, this option used primarily for system performance again. Yeah, to ensure that system does not uh, have any performance issues. Then based on the commit 100 invoices or 100 receipt batch which you give, based on the data, system will automatically issue the save to ensure that the rollback segment does not have any issue in handling the large amount of data. If you want to use it for you, then also specify what will be the transaction source which will be used for bills receivables. And if you're going to use factoring, then specify whether allow factoring of bills without recourse. Now, what does it mean? Basically, with recourse default means that company must buy back invoices which the factoring company is not able to collect. What happens is, basically, let's say if I'm selling 100,000 worth of goods to a customer. Now payment term is 30 days or 60 days. One option is I can wait for the due date and then customer makes a payment. Yeah, and then I get that money back based on the sales I've done. Other option is if I need funds urgently, what I can do is there are so many finance companies, I can basically do the factoring process. Factoring process means I in a way sell my invoice to them. I say, okay, I give you the invoice which I've sold to my customer. You, let's say, invoice amount of 100,000. Maybe you can charge me some fees. Let's say 1%, 2%, whatever fees as per agreed, and then you pay me the money now. And then later, when the due date comes, you collect the money from the customer. Yeah. So this is a process which is called factoring. Now what happens in if you have with recourse, then it means that I still, even though I've sold the invoice to them, I'm still responsible if the other part, my customer finally doesn't make the payment to that financial institute. Yeah, so I'm still responsible. Other option could be without recourse. Without recourse means that if the majority of my risk is still taken by the company to whom I'm selling my invoice. Yeah. So even though it still doesn't protect me fully from the risk, but most of the risk, because in this case generally I pay more fees to the company. So the company takes a risk in a way that they are charging more fees, but they are taking a risk that in case non-payment, they will have to handle the situation. Yeah. So this is something which you have to, if you want bills receivable, then you can enable these options. Okay. So with this, actually, what we have covered primarily, in case non-payment, they will have to handle the situation. Yeah. So this is something which you have to, if you want bills receivable, then you can enable these options. Okay. So with this, actually, what we have covered primarily all the system option, which are setting the foundation for your receivable module. Yeah. So system options are crucial for setting up how your receivable system will behave. You would have realized that we have covered so many options. Yeah, many options. When you go to screen later to define, you will realize many are optional. But if you just fill the mandatory field, you can still go ahead and save your system option. But if you are, the idea of sharing with you all this was, if you are aware of this information, then depending upon your customer need, you can give them the right solution. Okay. Now let's go and do the setup in the system for our one of our business units. To define system options, under financial, search for system option, then go to receivable system option. Here you can search for your business unit. If you find data for your business unit, then you can go and edit. If you're first time going into this screen, then you have to add for your business unit. I can search for my QS. There's no data for my business unit, so I will go and define. Click on plus to define the setup option for your business unit. Choose your business unit. I'm specifying 1000 for a split amount because my most of the invoices are either less than this money or more than this money, so I can get in my report, I can get this information. For DSO, I'm setting 30 because that is the payment term which I use for most of invoices. So as long as within 30 days, I'm fine. Anything more than that should be concern area. I don't want to use sales credit percentage limit, and I don't need a sales credit percent in my invoice, so that's fine. I can click on the print remit to address and print home country and give my default country as Singapore. Yeah, print remit to address and print home country will be printed on my statement, so the customer knows where to send the money. And default country will be used for my various purposes in the application, wherever the address is shown, system will show me the address and all based on the format required for their country. Application rule set, yeah, how the when the system is applying the invoice, how the money should be applied. Should it be applied for line and tax prorate, line first and tax after, or prorate all? These are rules with system when applying the receipt on invoice. How should system apply first? Yeah, if the money is not enough, when there is a discount to be calculated, what should the basis for a discount? Yeah, and preferred option is the invoice amount, total invoice amount, calculate discount on the invoice. Again, you have to see, do you, why there are so many options, because generally you don't give discount on the freight and taxes, because those are not something which you decide. Taxes you still have to pay to external authority which you collect from the customer. Freight you have to pay to external party who is helping you transport the goods to the customer. That's what generally the discount is mostly applicable for the lines information is given. So whatever I'm selling, I'm giving a discount on that. Yeah, so you can choose that. So depending upon your arrangement with the customer, you can choose appropriate option. I'm choosing lines only. Yeah, allow unearned discount. If you allow this one, that means at the receipt stage, even though customer is not eligible based on the payment term, not eligible for discount, but you can still enter discount. All these option, even if I don't tick not eligible for discount, but you can still enter discount. All these option, even if I don't tick today, tomorrow I want to use this option, I can come to this screen and enable this option. Yeah, discount on partial payment. If customer gives partial payment, do you want to give discount? I'm saying yes. Let me say yes for this, or I can at invoice stage show you functionality. When we reach that stage, I will show you the functionality. Then we come to the screen, we disable this and see how it affects. Yeah. Allow any business unit to process receipt. This is used for shared service environment. If you have that environment, then you can configure this option. Now, exception rule adjustment activity in case of any under and overpayment, when exception rules are called in the receipt, then if the result chosen is a billing adjustment, then what activity to be chosen for the billing adjustment? Currently, we have not defined any activity, so we can leave it blank. When we come to this, when you define activities later for using a transaction, then we come and update the screen. Yeah. Credit card with rule setup. When they go, you define text rule setup. This will be defaulted. I have filled rest of the option. I will quickly walk you through this option. I've given a cross currency rounding account. I've explained in earlier when it will be used. Realize gain and loss account whenever there is foreign currency invoice and there's a difference of exchange rate at the invoice stage or payment stage. A difference due to exchange rate in your counted amount will be booked into realized gain or loss account. Automatic journal import. Taking this one, when you submit transfer data from your AR to GL, this automatic journal import option will be defaulted as yes using this setup. And I'm using header level rounding and also given rounding account whenever any rounding happen, system will book the rounding amount into this. Days for posting cycle is 15 days. Yes, so whenever system is running the batch from receivable to GL, the batch it is bigger, it break it by 15 days each. Yeah, so this helps in the performance and there's no database issues of rollback segment at database level. So in the performance and there's no database issues of rollback segment at database level. For transaction, I'm saying text invoice printing. I want the total text to be printed only, not at each line level. When to generate document numbering, I can choose saved. None means I don't need it, but I'm choosing at completion stage. When we create invoice and receivable, you can choose uh, save and complete stage, which I will show you when we reach that stage. Item validation organization, where you're going to use any item master. Otherwise, if you have order management and item master implemented, you can choose the item validation organization. Typically, this is item master organization. I don't want allow changes to printed transaction. Once you print, then you cannot change it anymore. But let's enable it first, then we can disable it later just to see the impact. Because I'll be implementing document sequencing, so I don't want any transaction deletion option. I want recurring billing functionality, so I'm enabling this one. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't tick this one, you will not even see the task menus. For delivering transaction via email, I've given all the details here. Yeah, I want the business unit to be shown in the subject but last item, also transaction number to come as first. Yeah, then I'm giving some subject, dear customer, all these details you can give as per how you want to configure your contents. And similarly for statement, I've given similar details and some contents for the which will be part of the email. Now late charges, I want to enable this, but I have not defined all this necessary field to be filled here. Yeah, so if I tick this one, when I come back later, I will have to define all this information because otherwise system will not let me proceed. Yes, I have not defined any of this in the system yet, but we'll be coming back to this one to configure. As you notice, many fields are just optional. If you just notice how many fields have a star, very few. But the impact, even if this one is not star, but you know that many fields are just optional. If you just notice how many fields have a star, very few. But the impact, even if this one is not star, but you know the impact of not clicking this one, you will not see recurring billing. Yeah, so all this you have to carefully analyze each field and configure accordingly. Yeah, and then for customer, when grouping rule, when the data is imported in auto invoice for the grouping rule, I'm choosing default. I'll show you when we see the grouping rule definition. Reciprocal customers, so that one we can receive create receipt, apply receipts from one customer to other customer if there's a relationship available. For auto invoice, which is used for importing invoices, purge interface table for all successful invoices. Once loaded, interface table should be purged. Memory in bytes is a default, you don't need to change it. But if you're going to load huge chunks of data using auto invoice and your program fails because of rollback segment too small, if you can see that kind of error, then you can all file message, you can put 1. Yeah, if you make it maximum is 3 means it will be very detailed. The higher the value, the slower your performance of your program will be, because system will have to write so many logs for that. But if you're doing some troubleshooting, it's advisable temporarily to make it 3. Troubleshoot, see the log file. If you have to provide to Oracle, for example, for support purposes, you can do that. After change it back to 1. Tuning segment again related to your auto invoice process. If you want to improve your performance, choose the segment which is more frequently changing in the data. Yeah, and then if you're implementing item master, choose the system option. System as item flex field name here. Yeah. So typically, if you notice in this sheet, we have done the billing and revenue. Yeah, we have provided all the values. Some of the value which we have not filled yet will come back later stage when we actually define those values. Yeah. Now, after giving billing and revenue, I go to cash processing now. Transaction first to apply, and for auto match, I'm giving the references for first look for transaction number, then contract number, then sales order number, and then fourth I can say purchase order number. When you give a reference number in your logbox, system will use this to apply to see which where it matches. Find transaction number, it will match it. If it doesn't, it try to match the same number with contract number, sales order number, and then purchase order number. Yeah, auto match rule set. I'm currently using default auto match rule set because that's I've not defined anyone for my business unit yet. So once I define, later will come back to this and change it. I'm setting it auto apply and also setting the days to apply for 10 days. I also want to require billing location for receipt so that when if you don't give this one, then it will not appear on your statement. So I'm enabling this one. Allow payment of unrelated transaction. I don't want to enable that because then it will be prone to error. Yeah. Again, this is the option which we need to explain to your client when you're configuring this one so they understand and give you informed decision back. From allow payment of unrelated transaction. I don't want to enable that because then it will be prone to error. Yeah. Again, this is the option which we need to explain to your client when you're configuring this one so they understand and give you informed decision back. From right of limit to right of limit, I'm saying minus 1,000 to 100,000. Why I'm giving minus, you will understand this when we actually do the receipt because I'm going to use the same for my withholding tax. Yeah. Minimum refund amount is 100, so that means refund cannot be created below this amount. Refund is done when we have customer has made you overpayment and you want to give money back to customer. Chargeback invoices. When a chargeback invoice is created, what should be the due date of chargeback invoice? It can be I'm setting it as the receipt date. I don't want payment deletion. Yeah, these are all available for flex field, which are not defining anything currently. Now, application exception rule. Application exception rule comes when system try to auto apply the invoices and then respond activity as well. Realized gain loss account is coming from the billing section automatically here, and cross currency rounding account as well. I've chosen the rate type, which is corporate. Automatic receipt. If you're going to do direct debit to a customer account, then you can specify threshold amount. Yeah, and also invoice per commit and receipt per commit. This is more for performance purposes, so that system, if you have huge chunks of data, system doesn't go have a problem in processing that. Yeah. If you want to enable bills receivable, you have to provide bills receivable transaction source. Yeah, and also if you want to enable factoring without recourse. So these are the option. I've explained to you each and every option in detail in my slides earlier, so that you can understand when to use that option. At this stage, I've just configured a system as per key activity. Some of the values once we define, we come back to the screen and update that. So once you're done, you can click on save and close. Once you define your entity, next time when you come here, you'll be able to serve key activity. Some of the values once we define, we come back to the screen and update that. So once you're done, you can click on save and close. Once you define your entity, next time when you come here, you'll be able to search for your entity, and then you can inquire, and then you can go back and edit and make some changes if required. Yeah, we'll be coming to this screen again and again to make some changes once you do some configuration. In this chapter, you have learned various system options which are defined at billing level and also for cash processing level. As explained, receivable system options set the foundation for your receivable environment. Yeah, many options if you go to screen are optional. Yeah, so you may not use it today, but you can always enable those options later for your customers, and you have to be carefully analyzing each and every option, explain to your customer and getting the requirement and configure system. Time and attention and happy learning.